Tengan ustedes muy, pero muy buenos días. Estamos en el marco del cuarto Encuentro de Economía y Derechos Humanos, organizado por el CEMoP y la Fundación Madres de Plaza de Mayo. Y en este marco lo que queremos hacer es entrevistar a la gente que ha venido, a los invitados que han venido, inclusive invitados que han venido desde Europa, desde Estados Unidos y también desde puntos de Latinoamérica, ¿no? En este caso nos encontramos con David Harvey. Él es geógrafo, es sociólogo urbano, es historiador social marxista de reconocida trayectoria internacional. Por supuesto, David Harvey no habla español, no habla muy bien español, pero contamos con la presencia de Jorge Marchini, que es profesor de Economía. Le damos la bienvenida a los dos y claro, Jorge Marchini nos va a ayudar un poco a entender de qué se trata todo esto y vamos ya a comenzar con la entrevista. Bienvenido, David Harvey.
Gracias.
Gracias, Jorge, por estar acá con nosotros. Y bueno, claro, uno debería preguntarse a esta altura con qué expectativas se viene a este cuarto Encuentro Internacional de Economía, Política y Derechos Humanos, ¿no?
Whenever I come on these things, I always come to learn. So one of the things that I'm learning about is more about the movements here and a little bit more about the situation here in relationship to the crisis, because everywhere I go, there's a very different sense of what crisis or what it's about. And as a geographer, I'm extremely interested in the geographical differences of how people are understanding the situation right now. So being here in Argentina is very important to me right now to try to get some sense of how the crisis is felt and thought about in Latin America in general and Argentina in particular.
Cuando comenzó esta crisis, muchos pensaron que se estaba frente al fin del neoliberalismo, que el neoliberalismo había llegado a su fin como una crisis del capitalismo, ¿no? ¿Cree que esto es así o cree que luego de las reuniones que ha tenido el grupo de los 20 y a pesar de todas las cosas que se dijeron sobre esto, es un poco más de lo mismo, digamos?
I think I understood that well enough to say, well, I don't think this is the end of neoliberalism right now. It's a deepening and strengthening of certain aspects of it, but it depends how you understand neoliberalism. I've always interpreted it as a class project to consolidate political and economic power. And if you look at what is happening right now, the state has been supporting the banks. The banks are doing fine now at the expense of the state, and we're seeing a typical pattern globally of the sort that we had with structural adjustment programs of the IMF. That is, you bail out the banks and you hit the people. And that is exactly what is happening around the world.
En su artículo sobre neoliberalismo, usted sostiene que si bien se necesita una nueva arquitectura financiera internacional, dicen que el Fondo Monetario Internacional y otros organismos como el Banco de Intercambio deberían existir igual, ¿no? La pregunta es, estos organismos de crédito multilateral han tenido, digamos, casi una complicidad en lo que hace a la crisis financiera internacional. ¿Esto no es una contradicción? Digo, ¿cómo podría quienes fueron cómplices o quienes nos llevaron a la crisis internacional formar parte de la solución?
All along, it has seemed to me that if you look at, say, the debt crisis that occurred in Mexico in 1982, the role of the IMF was to bail out Mexico in order that they could pay the New York bankers in return for austerity on the people of Mexico. Now, this has been IMF policy since the early 1980s, universal. And one of the things that began to happen was the IMF became less important in global trade and global stability during the early 2000s. One of the things that's happened through this crisis is they have been reinforced. They've been given a lot more money to try to stabilize the system, but their policy is now exactly the same. In other words, when they took on the crisis in Greece and became involved in Greece, the answer was, we will bail you out, provided you engage in really, really fierce austerity measures, which is diminishing the standard of living of many people in Greece by a very significant amount. And I think that we're going to see the IMF doing more of that in the very near future. It's a classic neoliberal solution which is now being pursued.
El tema de Grecia y España, por ejemplo, es algo que estaba preocupando mucho a los países europeos, fundamentalmente
Sí.
Alemania. Esto lo
Sí.
charlábamos
Yes.
ayer
Right.
por la mañana con usted, ¿no? La pregunta tiene que ver entonces con esta suerte de moneda dura que es el euro. Si esto no ha contribuido a que los países pobres, digamos, de la Comunidad Económica Europea no hayan perdido de alguna manera su autonomía monetaria y que estos problemas, digamos, obliguen un poco o a salir de la Comunidad Económica Europea o a que se salga del euro, en todo caso, como un corset.
Yes.
¿Se entiende?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, the situation in Europe is very special because of the European Union and the common monetary situation. If you look at what's going on the ground in Greece, it's very parallel to what is going on in California.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not felt the same way in California because the federal government picks up a lot of Social Security, Medicare, a lot of those kinds of things, which the Greeks don't have. So you have a failed state in California, which is very, very different from that which is in Greece. So that, you know, this is, again, I come back to the idea that the crisis is felt in very different ways in different parts of the world because of the institutional setting, because of the public policies that are being followed, and therefore you have to take that into account when you try to understand how the crisis is unfolding globally.